Yeah, so I wanted to bring this conversation we were having about Shadeur Sanders on the record because you had alluded to a grander idea as it pertains to him and his budding NFL career. So, just to let folks know, if you aren't aware, Shadeur Sanders played in his first NFL preseason game against the Panthers, and he did pretty well. 14 for 23, 128. Oh, I'm sorry, 138 yards, two
Mm.
touchdowns. So I hand the
Yeah, well,
floor over to you.
a key point to that performance was that he was playing with players that he did not have reps with in practice because he's the fourth string quarterback. And, you know, I find myself in weird territory because me, along with the culture, feel like we've been hoodwinked and bamboozled, and that Plymouth Rock has landed on us in this regard. That, like, we see that he is more talented than where he was drafted. Like, we all kind of see with our eyes what we see, and then, you know, the conspiracy theories. And, to check my own litmus test on the matter, like, I hit ChatGPT to see if there's any collusion going on in this case. But
Oh, that's
let's
a
take a step back.
conversation for yourself.
Let's take a step back. Let's take a step back because this is about racism in the end, unfortunately. And
Of course.
this is about an institution, in this case the NFL. And I think it's a little bigger than just the NFL. I mean, you're talking about owners, you're talking about, I mean, I know the NFL encompasses the owners, but ownership might be bigger, larger than the actual league, as far as power. You know what I mean? And they will
I mean, it
say
would have
that,
to be like you got to be a billionaire to basically be able to run an NFL team. So, you know, I
yeah,
would
so
imagine.
he was a projected top five pick by, like, people who pick shit, and would end up falling to the fifth round. Um, I found out there is a John Doe lawsuit that was filed for $100 million in Atlanta court, claiming that the NFL colluded to push Shador down the draft list, citing the Sherman Antitrust Act violations, racial discrimination, and misleading fans. So someone has filed a lawsuit. It's not necessarily Shador Sanders. Um, he's doing it the right way. He's doing it on the field, and he's doing it in a humble way that even with a superstar father, and this is what the NFL in America doesn't want to see, is like a black father loving on his son and trying to pass on greatness with nepotism, stuff that white people do all the time. And this is the point that I wanted to bring out to you that I thought of just driving over here. We could see the difference of how Shador Sanders is being welcomed into the NFL with his father's superstar status and what his father has been able to do in college football, which had slews of doubters and slews of racist people, and that's what the watch thing was all about. Because after that game, before that game, players were singling him out. Like, college is about rah rah competition, good. There were players being interviewed in the week leading up to that were talking bad about Shador. So, like, when he scored that game-winning touchdown and he went into their end zone and he held up his rollie, I mean, he let them know what the fuck time it was. You know what I mean? Like, and the culture supports this guy. His jerseys are flying off the shelf because the culture realizes that this was an injustice, even though you can not find it. No official findings of collusion on the internet. They're just saying, you know, uh, teams were just shied away from his. Oh, no, bro, I don't want to make this shit up. This is what this shit says. But you can chime in on what I'm talking about so far while I look for this.
Well, I don't. I didn't. I admit to not have known that much about the situation,
Yeah,
but
like this
I
is like
told
what
you
he
before.
represents. Go ahead.
I'm saying I told you before when we had a conversation prior to the draft that this was going to be what it was about because it's like him being who he is, like you said, his father, just his personality, and the fact that with the NIL situation, like it's really not even about money.
But
You
it
know what I mean?
is a
No, I
little.
mean, yeah, it's about, but
It's
I'm
about
saying
money
like
that they got. They're gonna have to share with him whether they like it or not.
no, what I'm saying is, prior to NIL, like the narrative was usually like the dude, like football is his way out. You know what I mean? And like now that he's drafted, like his life has changed. But these players' lives are being changed way before they even get to the NFL. So
Yeah,
like what I'm saying is, money isn't the primary driver anymore.
yeah,
Like it has
yeah,
to be more. And you're about to go into the situation, I believe, about Shadeur's contract and asking for like a certain amount of merchandise sales or something like that. I think I read
yeah,
somewhere.
yeah. Because essentially because of the NIL deal, all these guys when they come into the league now need to cut deals with their team because even Travis Hunter, you know what I mean, has made money as a college person. Even Travis Hunter is a brand, as his jersey sales, but the official word is that like his precipitous draft fall was because of reputational concerns and value judgments. And I think hidden in the word value judgments is the money piece that like, they wanted to devalue him as much as they possibly could, but like the culture doesn't care. The culture still values what he represents and what's going on, and the culture is behind this guy like no other. It's bigger than what his dad was going through. When it was like, everyone was doubting him coming out of Jackson State, the smaller program, coming to play with the big boys, and a big like you're not going to be able to just turn a real program around. You know what I mean? And he was like, "Fuck around and find out." And like Bryce Harper and there were Philly players wearing Deion Sanders shirts, Colorado Buffalo gear. That became a symbol of fuck around and find out. You know what I mean? So like, this is like, you know, the continuation of, and again, let's look at our boy. Hey,
Wait, before we even go there,
wait. I got to do this. I got to do this for emphasis. Our guy, just for comparison, real quick, you know, Jaden Daniels, Jedi 5, to be clear,
to be
does
clear,
not does not have a dominant black father. He has a dominant black mother, and he is welcomed into the league not only because of his amazing talent, but you know that's not as scary as a black dad and a black son, and one of the most arrogant black football players that ever played a sport, being your dad. You know what I mean? Like this is a lesson of like, you know, we're going to show you where you are. We're
that's
someone's going to
that's
show you. We're going to show
basically
you where
what
you
I
are.
said prior to the draft. That's what they were going to do. They were going to make an example out of him. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, and I believe the Browns, given the circumstances, I believe the Browns probably would have. Oh, hold on. I believe the Browns would have picked him earlier if it wasn't for this situation. But it is what it is. Now, this is what I want to say. I don't.
They're still the winners. I think the Browns and Shadeur Sanders are about to be both be
Yeah,
winners in
I
this.
mean, but I don't want to start like really. It's almost like we're using this game to give him this like Phoenix Rising kind of moment, and I don't believe this game is enough for that.
I mean, it
I
was
want
for me. It was for me because again, the fact that we know football a little bit. Like it's about you know uh, connection with your receivers, with your teammates. You know what I mean? What made the Commanders so amazing last year was their connection. Um, he did not have that opportunity with any of the players that he was playing with when he scored all those two touchdowns.
yeah, and yet and
And
that's
so
what I'm.
like he essentially, even though they were all scrubs, he essentially willed the scrubs to two touchdowns. You know what I mean? He was low. He was wearing number 12, and it was a little 12ish. I'm
I
not
see
gonna
what
hold you. Like it was a little 12ish for like your first time ever. And the ticket sales when it knew that he's playing, what's past 5 or 6? Six to like they went up. They didn't double, they didn't triple. They went from like $15 to like $120 and higher. You know what I mean? Just with the news that the
sex
fourth string
couple.
quarterback, was actually going to play.
That's the
Yeah.
word.
Say it again. Or is it
Sextuple,
on?
I believe. Yeah,
Okay.
I believe
Yeah.
the word sextuple. But
Yeah. So he
damn, I mean,
sextupled that. He sextupled that motherfucker.
I want. I guess what I'm saying is like I want him to have this success on a season level, and
Yeah.
then like you could really have that much more ammo. You know what I
Stay
mean?
tuned. Stay tuned. I
Because
mean, I'm predicting. I'm
he's going
predicting
to
he
have
will
his
play.
chance. Yeah, he's going to have his chance to break the bank on him if he could continue to play the way we want him to play. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And have the success we want him to have, because eventually they're going to have to sit at the table with him. You know,
Even
after,
if, even if, even if, even if he, and again, this isn't a reach. Even if he ascends to start the season as the official backup quarterback, the victory is his already. You know what I mean? Because he could be that. He could be now. He's the young. Now he's risen. To at least and the team they ball for him. We've seen this when someone
yeah,
balls
but
for someone
that's not.
else.
But the narrative, sports
Mm-hmm.
media wise, is that he ends up being the starter by the end of the season. Like that's like the proverbial measuring stick.
I
You know
mean,
what I
like
mean?
at this point, like I'm like, again, he's Tom Brady. This is a fifth round pick. We're paying this guy nothing. You know what I mean? So like, it's all up. You know what I mean? Like like he can only go up. You know what I mean? Like and
So you're saying
so if he so
have
even if he doesn't start, even if he plays, he ends up starting the last two games of this season. I'm going worst case scenario. Or like in my mind. Like, you know, the buildup of every game of him maybe coming in and like, you know what I mean? Like this is gonna be and this is what the teams didn't want. The teams didn't want a distraction, you know what I mean, on their team if they wanted to continue to participate in a narrative that like, they have a more qualified player not playing. You know what I mean? Like and like the fan reaction to that and the culture reaction to that. You know what I mean? Like, this is what the teams didn't want to deal with, and that's why they pushed him down so far. They were like, you know, and it didn't help that he had Manziel arrogance, and he was coming in as a first round pick, and he had that confidence. But like, I'm going to tell you guys, there's a difference between arrogance and confidence. You know what I mean? Confidence is knowing what you bring into the room when you walk in there. You know what I mean? Arrogance may be a little inflated, a little like Donovan McNabb, like a little false confidence. I am the leader of this team. You know what I mean? No, but yeah, like yeah, real leadership and real skills pay real bills, and that's what Shadeur Sanders did in his first game. He showed some real skills, and he's going to be paying his bills and his kids' bills just fine. He's going to be he's already wealthy, but he's going to be, you know. and he's a God fearing kid, and he's like, again, it's a good story that like of a father that like, yes, didn't end up being with the mother of his child, but he still was a great father to all of his kids. You know what I mean? And America hates to see that shit.
Now, brings up an interesting point because in the midst of all this, we seem to forget that he has another son who also made his NFL preseason debut and performed, quite well from the reports. But it's like no one talks about him at all. So,
He's
I mean,
he's good with that. Yeah, you know, Shiloh.
no,
Yeah,
no, I don't even, yeah, I'm sure he doesn't want it. I'm just saying, like, it's
yeah,
funny how that's the case. Like,
yeah.
he has two sons doing this
He has daughter.
simultaneously.
He has daughters that play collegiate sports. Deion Sanders does. Like, you know what I mean? Like he has like, you
Yeah,
know, like
but
like
he has
the
two
bloodline.
sons.
The bloodline is, you know.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
think about the significance of that. Like, we're only focusing on Shadeur, but
Mhm.
he's the first person to have two sons
Yeah.
get drafted in the same draft. Not just one, two
But like
simultaneously at the
let's
same
just
time.
but like let's just put this like let's just like let's go X generation with this real quick because Deion Sanders was in our generation, a player that could play two different sports at a high level, would often play. I mean, Bo Jackson was the only other player. You know, there's other good players to do it, but like, you know, at a high level, you know, um, and you know, we're talking about kick returns. We're talking about shutdown wide receiver. He was like Eric Allen was the first one. He just went into the Hall of Fame. Like he was he was the first shutdown, like you know, D back kind of figure. And Dion is that as well. Was that as well. Um, but we talked about the Michael Vick documentary as now Dion has inspired Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson to become coaches. And we can talk about that some more, but put a pin in that. But like we talked about that narrative of the symbology of the black quarterback, because the quarterback position is the most important position at times. You know what I mean?
That's true. But I just
And
didn't
like
want it to. I
and
didn't want it.
the fact that he is the son and he's a quarterback of all things. He's a
Yeah.
quarterback, and of all things, he's actually kind of good at it. Of all things, how could this are you kidding me? You know, I'm putting on my clan hat for a second.
I understand. I do understand. I do understand. I threw it up. I threw it up for the sake of conversation, but I
Yeah,
just did not want it. I didn't want it to go unmentioned because I think that's
yeah.
monumental.
It is. Shout out to him because like we
Yes.
talk about the culture and that is very as football
Philo
season is
Sanders
approaching
is who I'm
us.
talking about if people don't realize.
Yeah, Charlotte does his thing. I mean, he got drafted like it's crazy. Like like it's
Yeah.
crazy to even get drafted. Like yeah, and he's balling, so it's crazy. That story is going to continue, and again, we're the fans. We're sitting here to watch it. We're the mob. You know what I mean? And no matter what's coming down from the top, like the mob was Rome, and the Roman Empire never fell. If you
Oh
know,
my
you
man.
know.
Peace, guys. Thank you for listening.
Peace.